Welcome to the Moms on Maternity YouTube and podcast. Today's host is Alicia Summers.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy dad day to join
Yeah.
us. You're going to provide a lot of our viewers with a lot of free help, and we're really looking forward to that. So first, you're the founder of InstaFather, which we'll get to in a moment. But first, I want to get into your background a little bit. So you're in Pennsylvania. You live there with your wife, your son, and you have two twin daughters. That's incredible. So at one point, you had 3 under 3.
I still think about that to this day. Like, how did we ever get through that? It was a lot.
Yeah, I had 2 under 2 for a period of time, and that was overwhelming. I don't know how you managed 3 under 3. Any secrets you could share?
Oh, great. If I had those secrets, I'll tell you what. I will say it's a lot of communication. Like, it's a ton of communication with your partner. That helps out a lot. But when people ask us, well, how'd you do that? We said, well, we had to. Like, you didn't have a choice. You just had to make it work. You know how it is. One day after the next, and then all of a sudden, our girls are 6 years old, and that seems crazy to me.
Yeah, they're 6 already, the twins?
Yeah, they just turned 6 a week ago, which is crazy because they were born like yesterday. So that math doesn't add up. But
that's really how fast time flies by right now, especially during the pandemic. Are they back in school?
Yeah, so where we're at, they are in in-person schools. The girls are in kindergarten, and my son is in 2nd grade, and they've been fortunate to go in person. I know you've been juggling with the at-home learning and all that stuff, but they still periodically go with virtual learning at home. Like anytime there's a snow day, which doesn't happen a lot your way, but happens a lot our way, they just say, oh, virtual learning, as if it's so easy for parents to just like drop everything and teach kindergarten.
Exactly. Well, this is the room we were in this morning where it was my office, because I still work today. So I had my morning meeting. My son had his morning meeting. And then my 3-year-old was over there practicing his letters and coloring. So it was a little chaotic, but fortunately they have a break. Dad took him out of the house.
Nice.
So, little peace and quiet. So aside from you being a super dad, which it sounds like you are, you're also a professional improv comedian, which I'm sure that really helps relieve a lot of stress in the home, especially with the pandemic, right? You know, as me, like being a stressed out mom myself, I know that laughter is the best medicine. So your family is lucky to have you. Did that help with everybody?
It helps. And I'll say my wife is extremely funny. She's in the improv troupe with me. That's one of the ways we actually initially got together. We started an improv troupe. That's kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway, and she's hilarious. But doing those kind of shows, and now we do them virtually, a lot of shows virtually, it is a good stress reliever, and it's nice to just like let off some steam and make people laugh. I mean, there's something.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot of jokes based on the pandemic now, right? Is that some new material for you?
No, I mean, just constantly, right? Yeah.
And then, so aside from that, you're also a marketing strategist, right? So tell me more about that. Who do you help market?
Yeah, so I'm a former journalist who's evolved into marketing strategist, as that happens a lot. So I get to just be creative all day. I try to tell my kids what I do, and I boil it down to them as I make commercials, which is way oversimplifying it. But sometimes I help write commercials, or I help companies make new brands and stuff. But they just say, "Daddy, you make commercials." I'm like, "Sure."
Interesting. Okay, so you kind of work with video production as well.
It's really whatever is needed. It might be helping an actual rebranding of a company for like a tech startup to helping to write a commercial script. It's a little bit of everything, which is kind of like being a dad. So
I would imagine that allows you some flexibility at home, right, with the kids?
Yeah. So I've been able to work from home this entire time, and that's a blessing because not all parents get that. My sister, for example, is a nurse, and she has a son, and she's had to work in a hospital this whole time with no stopping, right? And that's a lot. So being able to work from home has been very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine. Okay, and then aside from that, sorry, I'm at home too, obviously. My dog's so never mind him.
Mine will happen too at some point.
The kids are out of the house, but the dog is still here.
Yeah.
Okay. So you authored 2 books. The first is The New Mom's Guide to New Dads. Is that the first one you wrote?
Yeah. Okay. So New Mom's Guide to New Dads, actually got a copy there. So that was a long labor of love that I was able to publish right at the start of the pandemic. never would have planned it like that, but that's just the timing that happened.
Yeah.
And I've been able to talk to a lot of people about it. That's all about helping moms understand what new dads go through. Not because moms need like some guy to tell them what to do. Far from it. And if anything, it's guys aren't great about talking about their feelings. You know, newsflash there. But this helps a mom say, okay, well, I want him to be more involved. How can I have that conversation with him and understand what dads go through, even from what we see in pop culture, right? What our dads portrayed as.
Right.
And that's how a lot of dads frame what they should be as a dad.
Right. So if you could, I know we should read the book, but if you could give us one piece of advice from that book, what would it be? One takeaway?
Yeah. So it is very helpful to be direct in what you need. It is not asking too much it's not asking too much for a dad to be involved. That should be the expectation. There's a difference there where moms are expected to do it all, which is crazy, but that's what's been expected, right? You have to do it all. And for dads, it seems like if you do anything, like if you happen to change a diaper, you get an award and a trophy and like a bonus, right? That's not how it should be. But if you set that expectation early, you know, even during the pregnancy stage of, hey, I'm hoping that you can be super involved. What are things that you want to do, and let him take some ownership of that. So I took ownership of putting our kids to sleep as a good example, like every night, no matter what, especially with twins, that were some long nights. But that was something I always had, even to this day, I do a lot of that. And my wife had the expectation, and that was it, right? So it wasn't about like, can you pitch in? Fatherhood is not pitching in. Father is like, that's your kid too.
Yeah. Well, how did you do the bedtime for all three? Because I would imagine the two girls would together, right? And then but your boy would be separate. And how did that work?
You think so? To this day, my son, who is about to turn 8, sleeps in the same room as our daughters. Not because he has to, because we're fortunate we have room for him. He just wants to. So for a long time, I would put one hand on one daughter's little tiny hand. The other hand would stretch across to the other crib, and then my foot would actually reach across to my son, who was sleeping on the floor. And I would do that delicate balance for a while. Coincidentally, I have a bad back, but I don't know why. And I would do that crazy balance to touch all three at once, and then you kind of rotate around and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
You do what you got to do. So
you do, but then you probably need a chiropractor now, right?
I did. I literally had to get a chiropractor at one point, because I would like sit up sometimes like, oh no, that's it. I'm done. So
well, how long would that take?
Oh, sometimes it'd be like an hour in complete darkness, holding this awkward position. And if anybody walked in, they'd say, "Are you okay?" Like I looked like I just had a long night at a party and just like strewn on the floor. But we were just so used to it that we don't think anything. But now we can kind of take turns, and it's fine. They still want to hold our hand. We never did a cry it out method. Everybody's got their own methods, but we always stayed with them until they went to sleep. For me, for a while, especially when I was commuting further, that was the only time I got to see my son. Like really, because it was practically dinner time, that's bedtime. So that time with him, even if it was tough, that was my time with him, you know, so I didn't want to give that up.
Oh yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. We did the cry it out method only because it was the only way we could keep our sanity. And I mean, to each their own, right? Like there's no right way or wrong way.
Yeah.
But how long did it take you to finally get them to go to sleep and stay asleep on their own without waking up in the middle of the night and coming out to find you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's helpful that they had somebody else in the room with them. And like if you're a parent with just one kid, the actions and the reactions for the baby are going to be a lot different than if you have multiple kids. I wish I could tell you exactly how long it was, but it's a blur. So it's hard to know for sure. The thing about parenting is you get stretches where it's like, oh, this is finally working, or sleeping through the night. And then as soon as you get used to that, they start waking up out of nowhere for no particular reason. My one daughter, once we moved to toddler beds, make a habit of like creeping up to the side of the bed and waking me up with her face like an inch away from my face, which will make you just have a heart attack in the middle of the night.
It's creepy.
I'm like, you know.
And I think every child does that. You just, the mom or dad, you're sleeping and you just feel a presence.
Yes, I feel a presence.
And then a little face.
It's like the sixth sense, but it's your own child. So you're like, okay, that's fine.
It happens to every. to the best of us. And then you also wrote another book. It's called The Guy's Guide to Being a Birth Partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So that's the flip side of it, obviously. So I worked with Callisto Media based out of San Francisco to publish that. I wanted to have the chance to write something directly to dads as well. For a long time for InstaFather, I was writing a lot to moms. I wasn't even trying to, but moms are the ones who wanted the information. They would pass it to dads to say, hey, read this. This is something I was talking about. This is a direct conversation with dads. A lot of it is learn from my mistakes, right? But also, you don't have to think that it's unusual to be worried or scared even about becoming a dad, because your partner, if it's your wife, girlfriend, whatever it might be, they're nervous too. They might just put like a better face on it and like seem like they know what they're doing, but they're kind of confused and baffled too. So open up a little bit, have that conversation with them. But the more involved you can get early on during a pregnancy, the better off you're going to be once the baby arrives. So that's a lot of the book, like walking them through all of the pregnancy stages, and then to when the baby's actually there, so that you're well set up. You already know what it's like to be involved because you've been involved this whole time.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I was pregnant with my first, my husband and I would go to the hospital and take all these classes on how to be a parent. And then the second time around, we didn't do any of that. Like we just kind of winged it. But then we also had the foundation to go off of. But we going to those hospital classes, and then having a baby, our first baby, we felt like we didn't really use anything we learned in those classes.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, you could take it or leave it. I hadn't really dealt with babies at all, and that's a big thing. Even in the first book I talked about, that guys don't really grow up with people saying, "Hey, do you want to hold this baby?" Like people just don't do that to young boys, but they'll do it to young girls, right? So I needed a little bit of like, okay, how do you, like, literally, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing, right? The classes can help in some regards, but especially on the date of delivery, you kind of throw a lot of things out the window. You might have that nice laminated birth plan, half that goes out the window. I think what you really learn isn't the specific skills of, like, this term or that term. It's having that better relationship with your partner the whole time, that trust.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that's very good, because that won't change. The kids will change, but that trust and relationship.
Yeah, you got to be in it. You got to be in it together and understand that you're each going to make mistakes. That's okay too. Just give each other a lot of grace.
Yeah, good point. And then furthermore, as if 2 books weren't enough, you're also writing a journal now for new dads, and that's scheduled to be released later this year. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's going to come out later this year. I thought I didn't have enough to do, so why not work on another book? Sure. But this is kind of a companion piece to the birth partner one, and this is really talking to dads about, like, let's write out your emotions. Like, what did it feel like when you first heard your baby's heartbeat? Wow, what was going through your head when you started to, like, assemble the crib? That kind of stuff. It doesn't all have to get that super deep emotional. Some of it's just fun stuff of, like, what was like when some stranger put your hand on your partner's stomach. You're like, dude, like, what are you doing? Your partner might have thought that. So some of it's fun, lighthearted stuff, but you don't get that time back. I wish I would have done more of that, writing down my thoughts when my wife was pregnant. So this is a chance to make sure guys have that chance too.
Yeah, that is funny, because when a woman has a bump, it's sort of a free-for-all, an unwritten rule that anybody could just walk up to you and touch your bump.
Maybe that was like the one upside of the pandemic, that there were hopefully fewer strangers going up to pregnant women and saying, "Can I touch you?" All right. Yeah. I would see people do that to my wife. I'm like, you don't even know her. Like, that's her butt.
If there is a silver lining, that's it, right? Your personal bubble, your space. And I don't think that's going away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
So now you're also an award-winning parenting columnist and creator of InstaFather. So I promised we'd get back to InstaFather. Yeah. So I went on the website. It's a blog dedicated to helping new parents, especially dads, which is great, because there are not a lot of resources and not a lot of support out there for dads. It's all focused on mothers. Why do you think that is? Because in today's day and age, roles are switched, times are different. I would say there are more moms that are breadwinners nowadays, and more dads as stay-at-home dads, right? So Yeah, well, where's that? So I'm glad that you're offering dads more support.
But yeah, where are the other dads doing the same thing? Well, I'll tell you this much. There are a lot more dad bloggers out there than you would think. I've gone to an annual conference called Dad 2.0. That is nothing but like beards and flannel everywhere of just dads of all backgrounds and who all write about being a father. So they're out there, but it is a small portion compared to the mom bloggers for sure.
Right.
However, within that, there is a growing movement of, let's say, stay-at-home dads. You touched on that. I believe the number of stay-at-home dads has doubled in the past decade. It's really growing, especially because it's, I want to say socially acceptable. It should have always been socially acceptable, but it's not a big deal to have a stay-at-home dad at this point. I never try to pretend I've got an expertise in, let's say, being a stay-at-home dad versus what I am, which is a working dad, because everybody has their own unique experiences. But I figured with InstaFather, I could help a little bit where I wish I would have had the help. I started writing that while my wife was in the hospital. I would sit beside her bed. She was on bed rest for a month in a hospital, and I started writing some stuff because I was looking for resources and I couldn't quite find anything for dads.
Yeah.
We're super pandering, like dads were idiots. We're like, you should like be nice to your wife. I'm like, yeah.
When
Wait,
was this book written?
Yeah, it was
So
like
long
1950, the 1950s called like put down your cigar and help your wife.
Right. You're right.
Right. Okay, this is bad. So I started. There are apps were just like that too. So I decided, well, I'm just going to work on my own content. And even to this day, like I wrote a NICU guide because our girls were in the NICU. They were born at 31 weeks, and the NICU life is very intense. And again, like, they're 6 years old now, but I can think of that NICU life like it was yesterday. Monitors and all that kind of stuff. But there wasn't anything I could find that with what's it like to be a dad with kids in the NICU. It's a much different experience. So I started putting all that together. And it's been nice to have that resource for people.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you do. So on this on instafather.com, it says that you can gain new parent confidence in 3 hours, right? That's the selling point. So what's the magic recipe if there is one?
Yeah. So the 3 hour part of it is really I take a lot of that into the books that I've written, and if you look through that, but it's about confidence matters so much when you're a new parent. You're not going to know everything, and I don't mean confidence that you have all the skills and knowledge. It's confidence that you can make this happen, right? Being a new parent could be a lot. It could be scary. It could be amazing. It's ups and downs. What I often hear from somebody who just had a baby is, I just didn't know what this was going to be like, and now it's like overwhelming. Letting them know that you can get this, you can get through this if you're having a tough time taking care of the baby, if it's like the lack of sleep, whatever it might be, you can make this happen. And sometimes it just takes somebody in your corner saying, hey, have you thought of it like this before? Right? And maybe that's the emotional or mindset change you need.
Yeah. And I know postpartum depression is a real thing for many women. A lot of my friends in specific, and you know, when a mom is dealing with that, they need their partner more than ever, right? Did your wife deal with anything like that?
So we had a different situation. So it wasn't that, it was certainly the NICU was part of it, but something, and I talked about it a bit on the site, that our daughter Quinn, so she was actually the firstborn out of the two. She came out 5 minutes ahead. So she's, I guess, the middle child. She had a near-death experience right after she got out of the NICU. We were in our house, and she was at that point just 5 or 6 pounds, so very small baby. And she started to turn gray, and we had to rush her to the hospital. We thought she was okay for a second. She stopped breathing completely, and they had to perform CPR on her. And this is a tiny little baby. We're talking. Like I walked back into the emergency room area where she was because my wife was there, and we thought she just had a cold or something, because that happens a lot right after you come out of NICU. And they had a whole team of doctors performing CPR on my little tiny daughter, right? So she had to get life flighted to a hospital, and obviously she's fine today. And it was like a pneumonia kind of situation, but when you're that small, your airways are tiny, right? So it's it was one of those like things to turn a different way, and your whole life is different. That situation, and I know a lot of parents who have had a life-threatening situation with their kids, that takes a long time to get over. So my wife would say to this day, like, even if our daughter gets a little bit sick, she still has that little bit tense moment, right?
It's a little bit of PTSD, I would imagine.
A little, yeah, and that's a good way to put it. And in my case, I got into this like, I'm just going to make sure everything else is taken care of for as long as I could, and I didn't take a lot of time for myself. Yeah. And that ended up leading to some anger and frustration issues on my end because I wasn't dealing with emotions. I was just bottling it up without realizing it. And eventually I saw a therapist and really worked that out. And that's something I try to be open about as well, even in that New Mom's Guide, that when you don't deal with your emotions, especially as a new parent, which can seem like, oh, I'm fine. You don't realize it's been 6 months that you even thought about, like, how do I feel? Because you're so focused on the baby, right? So it matters. It matters to really take time for yourself too.
It does. And time for each other. I mean, date nights are super important. Kids rule your world, I know, but in order to keep that relationship strong, you have to focus on yourself and your partner and have some one-on-one alone time. Is that important to you? And do you make that happen?
So important. I'm really glad you brought that up, that everybody has a different situation with their partner. But if you are in a romantic relationship, your kids need to see that you've taken time for yourself, because if they never see that, when they grow up, they're going to take that same approach, right? They're going to say, oh, okay, so mom and dad never go on dates. I guess that's just what you do. Yeah. You're not giving up something or missing out on something with your kids by saying, hey, tonight we're going to go out and go on a date. Or even just, I'm going to take time for myself. I'm going to do that weekly yoga class or whatever it might be just for myself. I don't have to like apologize for it. I'm just going to do it because of me. Yep. That's okay, because you're going to end up being a better, more balanced person as a result.
Yeah, and there should be no guilt attached to that.
Oh God, no.
Because if you're strong and the relationship is strong, that's your foundation for your kids' future. They need a strong foundation, right? That bond.
Yeah, dad guilt is strong, but I know mom guilt is really intense. From any mom I've talked to, yeah, mom guilt is tough.
Yeah, every time I go to work, I feel guilty.
Yeah, but they instead they're looking at like this amazing woman who's doing what she loves, right? And that's something that they will look up to when they get older.
Yeah, right.
So,
and I feel like it has grown their independence as well. So they don't rely on me to entertain them 24/7. Like they figure it out on their own at such a young age. So there are pros and cons to that. I wish I had this kind of guidance when I was a brand new parent.
That's the whole reason I wrote these books for that exact thing. Like, I wish somebody would have told me these things. So yeah, that's why we do it.
Well, thank you so much for this free help. Any last bit of information or advice you want to leave before I let you go?
Yeah, if you have friends who are expecting, skip out on the cute outfits, get them some diapers. Like, those cute outfits last for like half a day, and then there's a blowout and they're destroyed. Get them diapers and onesies. Be kind. And if you are a new parent yourself, give yourself some patience and grace. It's tough, but you're going to look back and say, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah. Good advice, Andy. Thank you so much, Andrew Shaw, founder of InstaFather. I appreciate your time today. You were such a pleasure to talk to.
All right. Thanks, Alicia. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Bye, Andy.
Bye.
For more, please visit www.momsofmaternity.com.